Hey friends, welcome back. It's Kimberly from Modern Mess Princess Ministries, and we are in Exodus chapter 6 verses 6 through 13 today. And you'll hear a little bit of my counseling and psychology background coming through here because I want to take some time to talk about introverts. I'm an extrovert, not surprising to any of you, I'm sure. And but I'm married to an introvert, and I have two introverted sons. So I've kind of made it one of my life tasks to really understand what an introvert needs to feel heard and recognized, appreciated, important. And so I just want to talk through this verse. I'm going to first read it to you, and then talk about why this is important and what we can do. And frankly, I wanted to create a page that kind of looks like grief. So what I'm doing is just spreading some gelatos around, and then I printed out one of my pieces of art, and I'm using that as part of my entry too. You'll see that right over there on my right. I printed that onto label paper, and I'm going to be putting that. And I do cover up a lot of this page. This Bible is getting super thick and chunky, and so I've switched to a new Bible for studying, but so I'm giving myself a little more freedom in this one to cover up the words, since this one's really becoming just solely a Bible art Bible. Okay, so in chapter 6 in Exodus, it's when Moses really starts to get the call from God to go speak to Pharaoh. And so I want to read starting at verse 6. It says, "Therefore," this is God talking to Moses, "Therefore tell the Israelites, I am Yahweh, and I deliver you from forced labor of the Egyptians, and I will free you from slavery to them. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and great acts of judgment. I will take you as my people, and I will be your God. You will know that I am Yahweh, your God, who delivered you from the forced labor of the Egyptians. I'll bring you to the land that I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I'll give it to you as a possession. I am Yahweh." Moses told this to the Israelites, but they did not listen to him because of their broken spirit and hard labor. That's a whole nother lesson for a whole nother day, guys. That's really important. Maybe we'll revisit this verse sometime soon. Okay, then it says, "The Lord spoke to Moses, 'Go and tell Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to let the Israelites go from his land.' But Moses said in the Lord's presence, 'If the Israelites will not listen to me, then how would Pharaoh listen to me, since I'm such a poor speaker?' Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and gave them commands concerning the Israelites and Pharaoh the king, to bring the Israelites out of the land of Egypt." Now see, Moses' life is super fascinating. If you haven't read it, he lived a life that was like, if you kind of look at it, it's like a whole bunch of odd pieces that were all put together to create the beautiful puzzle that was his life. And in this stage of his life, God was calling him from living in the land of Egypt to seeing what was going on with his chosen people. Because Moses he was an Israelite, but he lived as an Egyptian. So another story for another day. But he also obviously lacked some self-esteem. He knows that he hears the voice of God, but he doesn't get a good response when he talks to the Israelites. So it makes it really hard for him to go back and try again. And this just made me really think about my husband and my sons, and all introverts. One thing I've come to learn about extroverts is that we easily fill up a room with conversation, noise, interesting things that we want to talk about, and we, unless we're aware of what we're doing, we don't necessarily realize that people actually want to talk. We're just not giving them the chance to. So what I've learned is in my family, and like when I was a professor at the university here in town for a few years, I learned that introverts need a lot of space and time to be able to speak and share their ideas. And then if you add something like this, where Moses was like, nobody's listening to me. I'm a poor speaker. Nobody wants to hear anything from me, God. So you add some attempts at speaking and the introverts get shut down. It's really hard to kind of resurrect the confidence of that introvert and tell them to keep trying, because introverts by nature do not like to fight for conversation. They want to have space, and they want to have space to think and pause and reflect and then add in their contribution to the conversation. But what happens with us extroverts is that if we're not aware of what we're doing, we are filling in all that space, assuming they're going to jump in like we like to do, and they will get cut off and cut out every single time. So the challenge I'd like to give us extroverts is to notice in conversations people who look like they're thinking but aren't saying anything, or you know they've got great things to say, but you don't know why they're not saying it, but you know they're introverts. There's a couple of things we can do. One is we can just pause and we can not talk. Novel idea. And it'll feel like, well, okay, why aren't you taking the invitation? I'm being quiet, for like 30, well, maybe 3 seconds. But it takes longer than 3 seconds for them to want to jump in, because 3 seconds still feels to them like an interruption and feels pushy. So my challenge for us extroverts is that we pay close attention to how we're behaving in conversations, and that we pay even closer attention to the people who aren't speaking in these conversations, and that we pause and maybe we don't give all of our ideas in this conversation. Maybe we just let some of them be our own ideas, and that's where they stay. And another thing is we can invite introverts into the conversation. And what I've learned when I invite my son or my husband or my other son, any of these introverts in my life, when I invite them in and I say, well, what do you think? They can't generally answer back immediately, but they will answer. But you have to give them space and time to really think about it. They aren't off-the-cuff thinkers. Well, they might be. They might have answers right away, but they don't necessarily want to say the first thing that comes to their mind. And they generally are not external processors, meaning they don't want to process things verbally with other people. They want to think things over in their own mind and then come up with conclusions of their own and then share those conclusions. So if you have an introvert in your life, I want to say kudos, yay, and how exciting, because they are some of the most deep, thoughtful, tender-hearted, kind, intelligent people I know. And the problem is our culture does not appreciate them. Our culture likes the more boisterous personalities, the people who kind of put themselves out there, the quote-unquote life of the party kind of people who can come into any room and tell jokes and light people up. Introverts get a raw deal in a lot of things. They miss out on promotions in work. They miss out on awards. They miss out on recognition from peers. They miss out on a lot of the things that us extroverts get kudos for. And sometimes they don't care about those things, but sometimes they do. Sometimes those things matter, and sometimes they are a matter of being heard or not being heard, and that can be a matter of, sorry, changing the camera orientation there, so that I could write. Oh, I forgot to edit that part out. Sorry, you guys. You're seeing what I usually edit out. So I would invite you, if you're an extrovert, to just pause and try to understand conversations and life with those introverts you know and love. Now, introverts, I would invite you to continue to try to speak. Even if it feels pushy, even if it feels like maybe you're being rude, you are generally so polite that you do not have to worry about being rude. Jumping into a conversation will probably feel rude to you, but to the extroverts in the room, they're thrilled to have you a part of the conversation. So my challenge to you is to continue to look for openings and share your thoughts, share who you are, share with the world, and learn to exercise your little brave muscle, because we need you. We need you desperately to be able to speak up and to be heard. So my promise to you introverts out there is to pause and allow room for conversation from all of the introverts in my life. And to you introverts, I challenge you to jump into conversations, because your voice is incredibly important. Your wisdom is absolutely necessary in our world today, because you guys think about things. You guys have deep convictions, and a lot of times they just get left unheard for all sorts of reasons that we've kind of already talked about here. So I thought it was just interesting looking at Moses, who had such favor with God and who was such an amazing man, so many times just got assaulted with his ego. You know, his ego took a beating, and his confidence took a beating because he wasn't feeling heard. So I just wanted to make a page, because that every time I see somebody I love who is amazing, but they're not getting heard simply because they don't speak out, or because they don't have this kind of on-stage personality, I just want you to know I see you, I hear you, and I'm going to be quiet now, just for you. Bye, guys.